A few words shook the foundation of my world. I realized that silence is the most powerful weapon. From the window of the lawyer's office, a thin layer of sunshine was falling on the floor. But even in this light, the atmosphere of the room was grim and subdued. The air smelled of stained paper and old ink. I was sitting in an old library chair, the leather of which had become wrinkled and cracked over time. In front of me, in the shadow of a vast mihrab-like wall, stood Vakil Sahib's heavy wooden desk, piled high with piles of papers. The lawyer himself looked so old and wrinkled, like they were born with this desk. His eyes were heavy, but they had a strange depth, as if he had buried countless secrets of life in his chest. My older brother was sitting next to me. Her clothes were the most expensive. Her body language was comfortable and confident. He was looking at his watch over and over again, as if he didn't have moments to waste. There was a slight, almost invisible smile on his lips. It was the smile that emerges on the face after letting someone down, dominating someone, defeating someone. It was the smile of victory, and I knew that this victory was against me. The lawyer took the keys out of his pocket and opened an old locked wooden box in front of him. From the box, they took out a sealed envelope, sealed with red wax. The envelope had "Will" written on it. He put on his glasses, carefully opened the envelope, and took out a document from it. The silence in the room was so deep that the sound of the paper turning was also echoing. Then he began to read. The first few sentences were formal. Then they came to the part where the division of property was mentioned. His voice was unwavering and unwavering. We, Ahmed Hassan and Fatima Ahmed, in our absolute conscience, transfer all our movable and immovable property, including all houses, plots, bank balances, gold ornaments, and all shares of business establishments registered in our name, to our elder son, Ajay Ahmed, who is 5 years older than our younger son, Karan Ahmed. Time stopped for a moment. I didn't believe my ears. The lawyer's voice was still going on, but those words were meaningless to me. Only one sentence was echoing in my mind. In the name of my elder son, Ajay Ahmed. There was nothing in the will for me. Not a single word. I had such an existence, which was completely erased in a few pages of this paper. In the last message from my parents, I was missing. I looked at AJ. She had the same triumphant glow in her eyes, and now that smile had spread across her face. It was a smile that included sarcasm and the success of a long-standing rivalry. It was the smile that said, "Look, I finally won. Your status has always been lower than mine, and now you're not." A storm was brewing inside me. A wave of anger passed through my being, like an electric current. I wanted to scream, break everything, overturn the lawyer's desk, and put a slap on my brother's triumphant face. My fingers pressed against the arm of the chair with such force that I began to bleed. But then, in an instant, I was in control. I held my breath, holding my emotions. I knew there was no point in crying out here. It wasn't the field, where emotions are at war. He was waiting for it. He wanted me to become uncontrollable, lose my dignity, and prove my weakness to him. He wanted me to do a play so that he could feel his superiority more. But then, in an instant, I was in control. I held my breath, holding my emotions. I knew there was no point in crying out here. It wasn't the field, where emotions are at war. He was waiting for it. He wanted me to become uncontrollable, lose my dignity, and prove my weakness to him. He wanted me to do a play so that he could feel his superiority more. I wasn't going to comfort him. I let go of my face. I wiped my eyebrows, turning my lips into a neutral, light letter. I looked at the lawyer, who had now read the will and was looking at us, perhaps waiting for our reaction. "Thank you, sir," I said. I didn't get up from my chair. I put on my clothes and walked to the door without looking at anyone. AJ wanted to say something, perhaps a sarcastic comment. but my indifference suppressed his words in his throat. I walked out the door, went through the corridor, and came down the stairs and out of the building. It was bright sunshine outside. People were busy with their work. No one knew that this 1 hour had turned my whole world upside down. I opened the door of my car, sat inside, and clutched the steering wheel in my hands. Then, just then, when I was completely alone, my shoulders began to tremble. Tears welled up in his eyes, tears of anger, deceit, and pain. But I didn't let them go. I took a deep breath, met his eyes, and let go of the steering wheel. It wasn't time to cry. It was time to fight. I walked home in silence. The images were playing in my mind. Those were the days of childhood, when Ajay always got the best gifts. The occasions when it was preferred. The smiles of his parents were always special to him. That was all for one day. Wasn't it important to me? I was just an accident, a mistake. What they were forced to do. When I got home, I opened the door. The empty house, where the memories of parents were encapsulated in every corner, now seemed a strange place. This house, which I thought was mine, was never really mine. It was all a fraud. I went straight to the attic, where a large old-fashioned trunk was kept. This trunk was from my grandfather, and it contained our family's history. I opened it. Old papers, albums, and scattered memories were recovered from it. I promised myself that I would work beyond emotions. So I took a systematic approach. I took all the papers to my room, cleared a large table, and began to divide these papers into different categories. The first category was personal letters. These were the letters my parents wrote to each other and to their relatives. These letters contained his private life, his thoughts, his worries, and joys. I read the letters carefully. I've been lost in these letters for weeks. In a letter, my father had written to his brother that he was worried about the losses in the business and was thinking of handing over the business to Ajay, but he did not trust his decisions. In another letter, my mother wrote to her sister that Karen, me, is very responsible, but he doesn't get the attention he should. These letters were presenting a contradictory picture. On the one hand, the parents were angry with Ajay, and on the other, they were praising me. Then why did they do this? Was it his will? Or there was someone else behind it? The second category is medical records, papers from my parents' last days of illness. I collected hospital bills, doctor's prescriptions, and medical reports. I remembered that at the last moment, Dad's memory was fading. There were early signs of dementia. In a medical report, the doctor had written that the patient, my father, is sometimes confused, and the decision-making ability may be affected. This was at the time of making the report. Third category, bank documents and business documents. This was the most important category. I began to carefully review bank statements, property papers, and business contracts. I found out some strange things. In one of the property documents signed by my father, the date was after the will was made. This document was signed by my father. It didn't seem to. They were different from the usual signatures. Light, trembling, as if imitated by someone. The second thing that came up was transfer of business shares. Even before the will, some shares of the business had been transferred to Ajay's name. These changes were made at the time my dad was sick and in the hospital. Was it possible that Ajay had pressured them by taking advantage of their weakness? I created a separate file and scanned copies and photographs of each predatory document, each contradictory statement, and each suspect signature. I arranged all these things in a chronological order so as to understand the sequence of events. Now I had a raw structure of evidence, but it wasn't enough. I needed more evidence about Ajay's own actions and his personality. I knew Ajay was known for his greed and selfishness. But publicity is not enough for the court. Solid evidence is needed. For this, I had to enter his close circle. I started a quiet and organized campaign. First, I started contacting IJ's old colleagues and employees. These were people who had worked with him, or whom he had somehow squeezed out. I would have friendly meetings with them, drink coffee, and slowly start talking about IJ. While talking about the old days, a former employee, Raju, who was fired by IJ without any valid reason, gave me an important piece of information. He said IJ would often take commission from other businessmen and sell them substandard goods. He also gave me some emails and messages, which had evidence of IJ's unethical business deals. There was a second person, IJ's old friend VJ, with whom he had several financial transactions until recently. VJ said that IJ had cheated him in a property deal. He gave me documents as well as an audio recording in which IJ was threatening VJ. It was the third way. IJ's secretary Shazia was now nearing retirement. She loved her parents. I went to meet him at his house. He told me that in the last days, IJ would often meet single parents, and after these meetings, the parents seemed worried and scared. One day he saw IJ holding a pen in Dad's hand and getting him to sign something, and Dad was completely confused at that time. I've included all of this information in my report. Now I have a strong case. But I knew the road to court was long, expensive, and uncertain. Before going to court, I decided to take the negotiating route. I contacted an experienced lawyer, Mr. Zahur. He specialized in inheritance cases and had a good reputation. I went to his office and told him the whole story. I showed them all the evidence I had gathered. Mr. Zahur listened to me carefully and reviewed all the documents. Finally, he said, "You have a strong case. We can go to court and cancel the will. But the court process is long, and it can involve family secrets going public. If you want, we can try to negotiate first." I agreed with his opinion. Our strategy was to show AJ this evidence and explain to him that if the matter went to court, not only would the will be void, but he could also face cases of forgery and fraud, which would severely damage both his reputation and business. Mr. Zahur called AJ's lawyer and set up a meeting. The meeting took place in a neutral venue, a hotel conference room. On the day of the meeting, Mr. Zahur and I arrived there. After some time, IJ and his lawyer came. IJ's face was confident, but his eyes stared at his lawyer over and over again, as if he was waiting for a confirmation. After the introduction, Mr. Zahur started talking directly. "We have evidence to show that your parents' will was made under suspicious circumstances. We have medical records that prove that your father was suffering from dementia at the time of making the will, and his decision-making ability was affected. We have documents that have a fake signature of your father. Also, we have witnesses who can testify that you pressured your parents." Mr. Zahur mentioned all the evidences one by one. As he spoke, IJ's face turned yellow. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. His lawyer was anxiously looking at something in his file. When Mr. Zahur finished speaking, there was silence in the room. IJ's lawyer said, "We need to see these evidences." Mr. Zahur handed over a copy to him. "This is for you." AJ and his lawyer began to review the papers. I silently looked at his face. AJ's eyes were widening, and his lips were drying. He knew that this evidence could destroy him. His lawyer said, "We need to look into it." We gave them a week. I've been busy myself this week. I knew AJ would be trying to find a way out with his lawyers and advisors. He may be preparing for a response. A week later, Mr. Zahur received a call from IJ's lawyer. They were ready to talk. Over the next several weeks, a series of secret negotiations took place. These conversations sometimes took place over the phone, sometimes in lawyers' offices. I kept myself away from these discussions, only giving instructions to Mr. Zahur. My conditions were clear. I wanted my fair share of property and business, and a guarantee of transparency for the future. At first, there was a lot of resistance. He was willing to give a small portion of the property, but was reluctant to give business shares. But when Mr. Zahor threatened to go to court and mentioned the losses he could potentially incur as a result, he had to bow out. Finally, a secret agreement was reached. Under this agreement, I was given a big floor house in the middle of the city, which was worth crores. I was given a 30% stake in the business, and I was added to the board of directors. It was decided that all future financial transactions would be transparent, and any decision will be taken with the mutual consent of both the brothers. Both sides pledged not to bring the matter to the public, nor to take it to any court. The agreement was registered in the form of a confidential document signed by both parties and their lawyers. When this matter was settled, I took over my new home and my share of the business. AJ was still a major stakeholder in the business, but now his autonomy had ended. I had to make every decision now. Family and friends understood that the two brothers had reconciled, and the matter was resolved automatically. No one knew what was behind this. It was a lot of hard work and patience. My heart was at peace that I had received justice. I got my right back. But the biggest achievement was that I had achieved all this without any noise, without any drama, without losing my dignity. I learned that true power is not in the noise, but in the silence. The real recompense is not that which is taken in the fire of anger and vengeance, but that which is obtained through patience, wisdom, and the path of the law. I earned my right, and at the same time maintained my honor and dignity. Today, when I look out of the window of my house, I feel proud. Pride is not that I defeated my brother, but that I overcame myself, controlled my emotions, and won a battle in which my own self was my greatest enemy. And I've learned that life's greatest lessons come in moments of silence, not in storms of noise.